Welcome back. This video is going to serve as part 2 of our discussion on The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. And in the last part, I said that I wanted to carry on in a second video speaking more specifically about an approach to treating children that have gone through traumatic experiences. So many of our children around the world, including our own country, have been neglected, abused, traumatized in various ways. I have personally worked with children in the foster care system that have been taken through TBRI, trust-based relational intervention therapy training, while their parents go through a similar training in the other room. I've seen these children firsthand. I've watched the progress that they're able to make, which is incredible. Humans, the mind, as I've said before, is very adaptable. And children in particular have a lot of neuroplasticity that allows them, if they can get the help they need, if they can establish the relationships they need to grow into healthy young adults, they can make great strides. Okay, I've also spoken, and this will become relevant as we get into the video, with teachers, early childhood teachers that are interacting with these students literally on a daily basis, sometimes, many times, even more than their own parents are interacting with them, okay? So that's where a lot of my perspectives are coming from, and let's just jump into it. I'm gonna be jumping back and forth with you and the book, from you and the book, as we talk about these things, but he's really, really speaking to me in this, and I wanted to share it here on the channel. So to start, he says, quote, "As we've seen, my own profession often compounds rather than alleviates the problem. Many psychiatrists today work in assembly line offices where they see patients they hardly know for 15 minutes and then dole out pills to relieve pain, anxiety, or depression. Their message seems to be, leave it to us to fix you. Just be compliant and take these drugs and come back in 3 months, but be sure not to use alcohol or illegal drugs to relieve your problems. These shortcuts in treatment make it impossible to develop self-care and self-leadership. One tragic example of this orientation is the rampant prescription of painkillers, which now kills more people each year in the United States than guns or car accidents." Think about that. A drug known as a painkiller leading to more deaths than guns or car accidents. Now, it is not typical for a psychiatrist to be prescribing painkillers, but they have, more so in the past. This book was written, I believe roughly a decade ago. But a pill called a painkiller, how much pain has it resulted in, compounded across families and communities who have lost their loved ones, even within individuals taking them who have lost their lives, even while still living, who have lost their livelihoods to these pills. Now, it's a complex issue. It's not just so simple as, well, then just take the pain pills away. Oftentimes people are in excruciating pain and need something to dull that pain. But it is a balance to be had. It is a great responsibility on the part of physicians to use these medications judiciously. Now, speaking more specifically about psychiatry, yes, it is also a balance to be had between how much time you can spend with each individual patient and how many patients you can see in a day. You want to spend more time with your patients so that you can really get into the depths of what they're dealing with and help coach them in their life, help them to understand who they are and where they've been and how they should move forward. You also want to use medications judiciously in a way that helps give them the best chance to be successful moving forward. But you don't want to spend so much time with one particular patient that you forego seeing all the others. And there's a shortage of psychiatrists in our country, and that shortage needs to be met. But there must be an efficient balance to be made, to be struck between the competing demands. All right, let's move forward and talk more specifically about kids. He goes on to say that the greatest hope for traumatized, abused, and neglected children is to receive a good education in schools where they are seen and known, where they learn to regulate themselves and where they can develop a sense of agency. At their best, schools can function as islands of safety in a chaotic world. They can teach children how their bodies and brains work and how they can understand and deal with their emotions. TBRI training, along with many others. Back to the quote. Schools can play a significant role in instilling the resilience necessary to deal with the traumas of neighborhoods or families. If parents are forced to work 2 jobs to eke out a living, or if they are too impaired, overwhelmed, or depressed to be attuned to the needs of their kids, schools by default have to be places where children are taught self-leadership and an internal locus of control. Let me go on a little further before we, talk about this. He goes on to say, when our team arrives at a school, the teacher's initial response is often some version of, quote, if I'd wanted to be a social worker, I would have gone to social work school, but I became a teacher. Okay. Now, in many ways, this is fair. Teachers are, in my opinion, underpaid for the work they're doing. And at one level of analysis, it makes sense to say, hey, you're the teacher, you're the one that has the most interactions with these children, you need to take on all these other roles. You need to teach them math and reading and make sure that they reach all these marks on their tests, but you also need to be undoing all the trauma that they're experiencing every day when they go home after school and over the weekend. And when they come in on Monday morning, you need to deal with all that, but you also need to make sure, don't forget they got to reach these marks on their scores for their state testing. Okay, and the teachers are underpaid and overworked, and we're asking them to do all these things. And you may be thinking about this, conceptualizing it in your mind right now, in the context of 1 child, or maybe 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 10, or 20, or 30 kids in a room, most of which, particularly in some areas of the country, maybe all of them, are going through a similar set of circumstances. And one teacher in the room is supposed to take on that role for all of these children within a school day and then restart the next day and the next and the next. So, okay, we can be frustrated that teachers have this approach of, look, I'm a teacher, not a social worker. This isn't what I signed up to do. We can be frustrated about that. We can say, well, you could do more, but we can also sit here and recognize that it's somewhat fair what they're saying, okay? To tell them to wear all these different hats with the amount of training they received to get their certificate in teaching. In many cases, they weren't trained to do all of these things. And for 30 kids in a day while teaching them all these other skills. And then we think about the children. They may go home and not have food to eat. They may go home and maybe no one's there. Maybe it'd be better if no one's there. I'm speaking a bit facetiously, because when mom and dad are there, they're fighting constantly. Or worse, which I'm not even going to mention in this video. And then they're supposed to come back to school the next day, their limbic system, their amygdala specifically, firing on overdrive, inhibiting their medial prefrontal cortex, which is there to help them, work on abstract thought. And then you're trying to teach them division. How are they going to do that? You're saying sit still and focus on this abstract problem on a piece of paper in front of you. And their mind, their emotional part of their brain is working on overdrive, just trying to survive. And then we're going to tell them, oh, you're not meeting your test scores, what's wrong with you, this, that, and the other. It's a problem. One that's not easily addressed or easily fixed, but these children are going to grow up to be the adults of tomorrow. They're going to inherit our country, our world. Something more needs to be done about this. And many people are already working on this. I choose to be another voice advocating for more of an emphasis on this. This deserves more attention than it gets. So what do we do about it? I think that in many cases, we need to accept where we're at. Of course, we can sit here and we can say that, all the individuals within our society need to take on more personal responsibility for X, Y, and Z reason. Okay, that can be true. Simultaneously, it can be true that these children did not choose to be born into the situations they were born into, and that they don't have the tools at this age to deal with what they're going through in a way that allows them to still come to school and reach their, potential on their schoolwork and pass all these tests so they can move on to the next grade and the next when they're just trying to survive. So I think what we need are more teachers or social workers or some other specialized group in the classroom with children. I think what we need are more trauma-informed educators in schools. And that's going to cost more money. Yes, of course. It's going to save more money in the long run, I'm sure. And beyond money, it's going to be a saving grace for our country going forward, to get in at the ground level, to take a long-term approach to this problem, and to help these children develop and prosper. Some of them are going through such horrible things at home that we're led to make a decision of whether or not they should even be in that home in the first place. These are difficult decisions to make because no one wants to be in the business of taking children away from their parents. Sometimes it really is the right thing to do. But that's a rope that, is at times difficult to balance. Because who's making the rules of what does and doesn't cross the line? Many things are clearly obvious. If we got too lax with it, then we could find ourselves in a territory that's a bit more ambiguous. That's scary to think about. And then on the other side of it, we see that foster children are suffering as well. The foster system is broken in many ways. And these children are continuing to be abused at times within the foster system. It's mentioned in the book that only 6% of them go on to, achieve their goals in higher education or get degrees. And many of them go on once they, age out of the foster care system to be incarcerated. So what do we do about this? I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do appreciate that this book shines a big spotlight on the problem and says something needs to be done about this. And maybe we should focus on the children. Maybe we should get in at the ground level. Maybe we should pour more resources into schools, take this problem more seriously, so that in a long-term approach over 2 or 3 generations, maybe we can make the biggest difference possible in terms of turning this ship around. I hope that we can do that. I hope that I can find ways going forward as I complete the rest of my training to address this problem. I hope to collaborate with other people on it. And I know that there are already many others out there in the world, in our country, in the community, doing this sort of work and doing their best to make a difference. And I just wanted to use this video to shine more light on that topic, to keep the conversation going, to share my opinions. And I hope that I've achieved that here. So I thank you for taking the time to watch and to listen to what I have to say on this topic. I recommend this book to you if you haven't read it yet. It will really, enlighten you in many ways, I feel. And please feel free to share your thoughts and comments in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.